Welcome to Deep Dive. I'm your host, Kevin Benedict, and I want to thank you for joining us today. I want to introduce my guest, who I'm thrilled to introduce today, Umang Bedi, who's the president of Dailyhunt. Umang, thanks for joining us.
Thanks a lot, Kevin. It's an absolute pleasure to be here.
So I'm dialing in here from Boise, Idaho, in the northwest corner of the United States. Where are you calling in from today?
I'm in Bangalore today, which is where I'm based, and we've got a great sunny day today, so it's fantastic to be here with you.
Oh, that's phenomenal. Now, if you guys don't know Dailyhunt is one of those special companies that have figured out the magic of growing rapidly and producing content that's widely read. If I just read through some numbers here, among 260 million monthly active users on the Dailyhunt site and application and platform. That's incredible. 19 billion page views of content and more than 2 billion video views per month on your site. That's incredible. Tell us about that.
Thank you very much. I think we've just about scratched the surface. And we have a long way to go, because in a country of 1.3 billion Indians, while those numbers sound pretty amazing, we have half the country to connect digitally, and we have a long way to go in this journey. So it's been a humbling start. But let me tell you a little bit about how it all came together.
Please.
So I'd spent about 20 years in tech, and had the privilege of working for some of the largest brands. I was very young when Intuit asked me to lead its global business division at about 27, where we weren't given the family jewels of QuickBooks and Quicken and TurboTax that you are familiar with in the US, but we were developing local products for the local market. So I was very young and got pushed into the startup mode, where we kind of created new offerings and went about that entire journey. So I spent a couple of years with them, and then moved on to Adobe, which was a fascinating time for the company, because we were moving to the cloud, and India was one of the first few markets that adopted that strategy, which eventually added over $100 billion in market cap. So a very exciting phase of growth. And over the last couple of years, I've spent time leading Facebook in India as their MD and CEO. And it was a fascinating phase of growth as well. But I think I touched 40. And at that point, my wife describes it as my midlife crisis. But I went from having this privilege of working for amazing brands, working with amazing people, and I wanted to do something on my own, locally based in India. At that time, around 2 years prior to that, Viru, who had actually founded Dailyhunt, and I were talking. And I was very fascinated by two things that Viru had done. One was he took a bet on two things early on, 3 or 4 years earlier, around local languages, Indian local languages, that is, and mobile, both of which weren't very sexy back then, right? But he had a core belief that this platform is going to explode, or this space is going to explode. And seeing what I had seen at Facebook, we came to a point in early 2016 where there were about 100 million people on the platform. We exploded in about 18 months to about 270 plus million people monthly active, but then it plateaued out because the internet was pivoting, and while Facebook and Instagram were largely serving local audiences, Indian audiences in English, there was this massive growth post the geo effect. And what happened was, if you think about India, in a country of 1.3 billion people, there are only 120 million people that natively communicate, in English as a language. Apart from that, it's all local languages. So think about it this way, that Nelson Mandela once said that when you speak to a man in a language he understands, it goes to his head. But when you speak to a man in his language, it goes to his heart. And I think that was a very powerful core belief that Viru and I had been talking about. And, at that point of time, about a year ago, we were about 40 million monthly active users on the platform. We were growing at a very steady pace. And I wanted to do something entrepreneurial. So Viru and I came together, I remember, on this holiday in Goa, which is a seaside town in India. And it was Christmas Day, and he said, brother, let's do this together. Because our goal was simple. We said, in a country, or in any country in the world where the duopoly operate, in digital media, that's where maximum time spent and maximum user bases are built. And what does it take to build a large digital media, multi-billion-dollar corporation with the duopoly present, right? Because we are a free market in India. And that was our goal. And we felt that our moat would be local languages, fundamentally because the internet 3 years ago in India was 200 million people, largely English consumers. The internet today is about 500 million people, which has about 180 million English consumers and about 230 million regional language consumers.
Wow.
But in the next 3 years, the internet in India over the next 3 years would hit about 900 million people, by which time local languages would be around 680 to 700 million people, and English would just remain or grow at 1% from the current 180 million to about 208 million. So 3/4 or 80% of the internet is going to be local language consumers, which makes this the single biggest opportunity in the digital media space in the country. We came together last year in March, and we redefined our mission. In our first avatar, we were a news aggregator, and we aggregated content from large publishers. And we said, as the internet is pivoting, we've served news-hungry audiences. That audience base isn't really growing. So let's make some big pivots. So we redefined the mission of the company, which is we want to be the Indic platform, or the Indic language, Indian language platform, serving the next billion users who are coming online, right? But the next billion users had very different needs. So we moved to a artificial intelligence or AI-powered content discovery platform for local languages, where we enable deep discovery, deep social effects around content, and we helped people consume content which was not just informational, which was news, but entertaining and enriching, which was everything else, right? Astrology, Bollywood, cricket, divinity, lifestyle, entertainment, sports. Ever since then, the numbers are there to speak. We've grown 10x in terms, 8 to 10x in terms of the user base, doubled the time spent to nearly 28 to 30 minutes per person per day, and unleashed a pretty strong monetization stream that by the end of this year would be over $100 million. So best decision of my life. I the corporate journey, and I worked with great leaders, but doing it on your own with a brother in arms and a partner is just special.
Umang, well, thank you for, pulling back the curtains and giving us a view on how that was formed. And, I talk a lot about customer experience on Deep Dive on the channel here. And to me, this is just a perfect example of, looking at really what the customers desire, which is their own local language, and providing that in a way they can consume the same kind of information that other people can in English, but get it in an environment that they're more comfortable with. That's absolutely just feeding right into a brilliant customer experience. So thank you for sharing that. Now, when I think of you achieving a kind of advertising-led revenue of $100 million this year, that says you put together a lot of different pieces to this puzzle. There must be ad tech, there's personalization, there's content aggregation, there's all that, and local language, all this. Talk to us about what those pieces of the puzzle are and how you've been able to put that together to be this revenue engine for you.
Perfect. So this may be a very long answer, but I'll try and make it as short as possible. So On the supply side, we have what we believe as the richest pool of content today. We aggregate content from over 2,000 large publishers or organizations. We aggregate content from over 15,000 professionally generated content creators across language and formats, which include text, images, video, and viral cards. And we also aggregate hyper-local content from over 600 districts of the 29 states in India, right? Today, where we're accumulating over 3,000 videos a day. Together, when this content comes into our system, we are ingesting over nearly 500,000 new pieces of content every day, right? So all of this is done in real time with API integration and direct content feeds. Now, within that, we process the content across 14 different languages, across video, text, and viral cards. And we've built machine learning models to understand the content at depth. So for each language of the 14 that we support, we have over 20 to 25,000 plus machine learning tags that go deep. So, let's say I'm looking at a video and the video is discussing a mobile phone review. So I then try and understand it's a video in technology. It's talking about gadgets. It's talking about a mid-end mobile phone review. And it's, let's say, comparing two Chinese handsets called Oppo and Vivo, right? Yes. And so we literally are able to break down the content and understand it contextually by language, which is the secret sauce. And there are continuous iterations and improvements that are being done in these neural vectors in the algorithms. On the other hand, what the algorithm is doing is trying to understand and build a content graph for a user. So the beauty of Dailyhunt is unlike social networks, we don't personalize your information based as a social graph. We do this basis building a content graph, and that's built by only you selecting your language preference. Post that, boom, you're in the platform. We sample different pieces of content that you would probably engage with, and we track that engagement. So we've built over 60 AI and machine learning models that are trained on over 1.4 million features and over 50 million pieces of historic local language content. Over that, we track over 5 billion interactions, which are clicks, likes, shares, user interaction events processed in real time. And we form a user consumption profile that today has exploded to over 20 terabytes. And we track content performance across various attributes. And in real time, we're able to deliver a very personalized feed to you as an audience in that language of your choice by time of day. So you may choose to consume astrology and divinity, which is very large in India early in the morning, or you may go into finance and business during the day, and entertainment or cricket or local sports at night. And so we really deliver that meaningful, personalized, customized experience that is appealing to the audience. At the same time, we also have to cater to advertisers. And the beauty with a platform like this is you can offer very deep and meaningful targeting. So one thing that we do, which is special, is India has about 21,000 zip codes. We have traffic coming to us from 95% of them. And so we allow advertisers to target by location, by language. And that's really helpful for small businesses, because if you're a small business, you really want to focus on audiences that are in and around a certain vicinity or a certain number of square kilometers or square miles of a certain number of zip codes. And so we allow you to reach out to this audience to deliver your message in various formats. It could be video, it could be cinemagraphs, it could be banners, it could be targeted advertising, which is dynamic in real time. And so we built our own ad tech platform. And built a self-serve engine for advertisers, along with feet on street who are catering to the top 500 brands in India. And all of this kind of comes together because we're building an ecosystem. The ecosystem is about content creators at one end. The ecosystem is about consumers at the other end. The ecosystem is about advertisers at the third end, but it's about enriching and adding value. And adding value to the consumer is giving him or her content that he or she chooses to consume at the time of day in their language. Adding value to advertisers is giving them click-through rates and performance, which today we're at twice the average of any other platform, including the globals in India. And value to content creators is discoverability of their content and monetization from day one, equitable monetization from day one. And so it's a win-win and value across the chain of ecosystem that's delivered by a very passionate team of engineers and content creators and folks on the ad tech side and ad ops. And there's so many bits and pieces around the personalization stack and the AI ML engineers that I think the goodness is just kind of coming together, and we're just about scratching the surface.
Well, that's just fascinating, because I know it's not easy to serve both masters, right? You have your advertisers and you have the consumers. And sometimes advertisers might push a little one direction and viewers either don't like it or they respond in negative ways because it's clickbait. And I know that has to be really hard, because sometimes the most titillating headlines get the most views, but there's not a lot of content behind it that's useful. So I know that's a big challenge. So I can appreciate the challenge and the investment you're putting in there to try to get that formula right. Now, when I think of all the different segmentation of advertisers, and I was reading about Dailyhunt, and I know that you guys have strategic, different groups focused on strategic accounts, large enterprise accounts, the mid-market, national, state, government, business, ad networks, all kinds of things like that. Do you have to approach advertisers in each of those different groups differently because they have different expectations? Tell me about that.
Yeah, so I think, Kevin, great question. So I think we stick to certain fundamentals across the board, which is what we call our first principles. And our first principles are: we're never going to impede on the privacy of our users. We're never going to share personally identifiable information, and we're never going to share stuff about their client IDs and stuff around their phone, which is a gray area. But even though we don't have the GDPR in India yet, we kind of think around the frameworks there and take the learnings of the industry to do a good job there. So those are first principles that we don't compromise on. However, you're absolutely right. Different advertisers have different needs, and I break them up into 3 or 4 large need segments. The first one is around what I call the online segment in India, which is thriving. The online segment is all about performance advertising, right? And unfortunately or fortunately, we're never going to have the same richness of data that probably a Google or a Facebook can. So in order to drive deep performance, what we do is we do deep integrations with them. We pass events in terms of behavioral events from both sides, and we integrate their experience literally onto our platform. And that gives us a lot of meaningful insights to drive better performance. So I think that's one kind of conversation. Within the large advertiser segment, again, brand is huge, right? But the funny part is, thanks to our colonial heritage, we still are very dominant in communicating in English on our platform. And for that, we acquired a local publisher called One India. It's a 400-man editorial team that we have on our rolls, which helps in translating brand content in different languages, because brand advertising in India is massive, given just the dominance of 4 or 5 players in every vertical constitute about 80% of the market, very unlike the US. Yeah. The winner takes it all, right? So if you think about the online business, between online commerce, between Flipkart, which is now Walmart, and Amazon, that's about 90% plus of the market. Right? So that's reflected in every vertical, from automobiles to telecom to finance and whatever. And so we do custom branded messages wherein with targeting, we could know that, hey, does this consumer even have the Advertisers app? So serve him with a re-engagement message. Or if he doesn't, introduce him to the concept of online buying or online purchasing. And so it's a different communication. Again, the communication can be different by location and, of course, by language. The third thing that we do for the smaller advertisers is build comfort for them on our reach, the ability to serve a certain frequency, and the ability to drive performance by maybe giving them coupon codes by which they can track footfalls to store. Because at the end of the day, small businesses their two biggest needs are help me with my finance, which of course we don't do, but help me get more customers.
Yes.
Help me get more customers through the door. And so as long as you can measure it and track it in real time with the right tools and the right transparency without impeding on user privacy and it feeling intrusive, and when it is intrusive, right? Consumers are very, very smart.
Yes.
And so, those are the first principles that we use and how we cater to different audiences differently.
So Umang, everybody's talking about this new economy we're in, which is the experience economy. It's not just about the products, because they can get the products almost as a commodity in many different places. They want the experience around it. So let me just ask you, you can look at news from a lot of different sources. What experience does Dailyhunt want to provide their viewers?
That's it's a very deep question. So let me start off by saying that today we are in the experience economy, right? And experiences are goosebumps. They are providing those moments of truth or moments of fulfillment, and they really define the brand. And up till maybe a month ago, we had not even advertised ever in our lives because we were a small startup. We're getting bigger now, and hopefully large enough in the next couple of months to realize that dream of becoming a unicorn in the digital media space, which hasn't been done with a duopoly present in India before in a large number of markets. But we've taken some very strategic calls. Now, the first thing around experience is personalization. The lopsidedness of personalization is echo chambers, right? And so you tend to create these echo chambers of, I'm just going to show you the kind of content you want to see and not show you diverse perspectives. That's good and bad. It's great because users tend to spend more time, but they're not really truly being informed. And I think for us, we took a very strategic decision where we said, we want to be dead neutral and provide you with the complete picture, which is the two sides of a story, right? So for instance, last year or 2 years ago in India, we had demonetization, where 98% of our currency was demonetized overnight. Now, there's a view in media that was the most brilliant thing that the government really did. And there's a contrasting view which said, very poorly implemented, so many people were inconvenienced, so on and so forth. It was just the wrong thing to do for the economy. Now, for us, if you put left-wing content or right-wing content, we're going to show you more and more of that. And that's what creates the echo chamber. Now, in order to break that, what we said is, using the algorithm, every time we show you a perspective of a story, we're going to show you diverse perspectives such that you could be an informed user who could form his or her own opinion. We did that across languages, across all forms of content. And we pivoted that to astrology, to Bollywood, to cricket, to divinity, to lifestyle, to entertainment. So I think the promise of the experience that we deliver on the platform is diversity of views, diversity of perspectives, to really help you form a more informed opinion. And that's really the tagline of our latest TV campaign, and we are around the election season in India. It's going on as we speak. And it basically, we've used a parrot because a parrot repeats what he or she has heard. And that's how most of us form our opinions around news and events. But we're saying, hey, don't be that parrot. Form your own opinion colloquially across different languages in which we are reaching out on all mediums, television, print, and every other medium known digitally to inform our audience around this very crucial period where the next 5 years are really going to define the future of our country. And, as responsible citizens, we need to be informed and make the right choice for the right leader, for the right government.
Umang, that's very commendable. I think we have a lot to learn in North America with the way you're doing that. So thank you for leading the way and showing us an alternative method. I appreciate that. So how do you define good content, Umang?
Yeah, so good content for us starts with certain principles where we analyze content around multiple vectors. Now, let me start by saying that we don't do user-generated content as such, right? Because our platform is where you get large organization-generated content, professionally generated content, or our own content that we are aggregating from our networks, which we have commissioned on our own. So it's Dailyhunt exclusive and original. So we've really gone from being an aggregator to a curator to even a producer of content, right? And hyperlocal is important because in India, yes, I do care about the tax war or the core, something happening globally or the trade war happening at one level, but I care about what's happening in my neighborhood, about my locality, right? And so we put a special emphasis where we now have become India's largest hyperlocal video content creator, creating over 5 million content pieces, which are being done by us in real time every day across 14 languages. But what we do with the content coming from organizations or from professionals is, at a first level, we check it for not safe for viewability, and we look at it for soft porn or porn content. We try and sieve out objectionable imagery, whether that imagery has it's gruesome or it's of a sexual nature. We weed that out of the platform fairly well. We also look at human intervention. The second thing that we do is every publisher that gives us content, what he or she doesn't know is we assign that publisher a quality score. And that quality score is picked up through various signals around their content, around their brand, as well as around the specific piece of content. We assign each content piece a quality score as well. Now that is tracked in real time with signals from the audience. So if any piece of content is flagged more than 3 times by users as being objectionable or as being fake news, right? We pull that out of the platform and do an offline process with the publisher to validate it, right? Because if you're aggregating 300,000 pieces of content every day, unique in real time, you're building a repository of over 4 million pieces of content from which you're serving content to your 200 million users every day, just so that the content is recent and is new. You can't do everything in real time. So you have to have the right offline checks and balances where we validate the content. The good part is because we've got a 400-man team of journalists who are on our rolls of the company with the acquisition that we made, we now have this editorial skill set that a lot of tech platforms don't. And we realize that there is a lot of on-ground effort that needs to happen to weave out fake news, to weave out objectionable content. So it's a combination of AI and ML technology. Technology isn't perfect, we know that, but it's an offline checks and balance mechanism with the people that we have on board. And so that's how we define it.
That is detailed. Thank you for sharing that. It's fascinating, that whole concept there. I've been having lots of conversations around similar things here in the U.S. as well. So it's just fascinating to learn how you've been able to approach that. Umang, let me ask you a question about content consumption. How have you seen your viewers and your consumers of content, how have you seen their behaviors and preferences change?
Well, that's a great question. So, I think when people start with content, news is a great hook where everyone wants to engage with news for various reasons, for being more informed. Some kids use it for preparing for the general knowledge section in their local government exams because government jobs is a big deal in India, so on and so forth, right? But with the rise of 2 forces, one is mobile and mobile data. India has become the cheapest country in the world for mobile data consumption in terms of per unit charges. And we have become the largest mobile data content consumer in the world today. We consume about 2.5 billion GB of data every month on 4G networks. whereas the US is under 1 billion and China is below the US as well, right? Because you have well-defined Wi-Fi networks which don't exist in this country because we've kind of leapfrogged the PC era, and we have about 50 to 70 million PCs and nearly 800 million mobile phones. And so what mobile is driving is cheap data. Today, in $2 a month, you can get free voice calls for the whole month and a GB and a half of data a day. A GB and a half of data a day gives you access to 4 to 5 hours of high quality HD video consumption, right? And by the way, we only have 180 million television sets. So video and vernacular, which is local languages, is becoming the new voice. And what happens with video content is it needs to pivot. It needs to pivot to becoming more entertaining. And our goal is to really be that local entertainment platform for Bharat, which is local India, right? Or the Hindi translation for India. And so when you think about it, our goal is never to go and compete with the Netflix and the Amazons and the big content factories of the world. But it's really around hyper-local content, hyper-local video, entertainment that's local, entertainment that's appealing, gaming that's appealing. And then having a way using various technologies, including blockchain, to try and get better on understanding consumer preferences, understanding what kind of content is working, what kind of content is not, and using that information to channel back to content creators and saying, hey, in the Bengali language, people love talking about art and music. Let's do more shows around that. Or in Tamil and Telugu, people like their local, their local Bollywood equivalent film industry, which is Tollywood or Collywood. And so let's get big with local pieces of content and make it short form, make it snackable. Give me webisodes, which could be 5 to 8 minutes, and maybe a series of 20 of them, right? Rather than a 40-minute webisode, which may not be how content is consumed on the platform. So you're tracking a lot of signals of consumption. You're tracking a lot of signals of consumer preferences. A lot of that is entertainment because, how much of news would you just consume for 6 hours a day on your phone? And channeling back that goodness to the creator ecosystem so that they can drive better monetization of it.
Oh, that's brilliant. So let's put on your futurist hat, Umang. If we look forward 3 years, how do you see kind of the technology ecosystem and the next billion Indian users? How do you see that changing and evolving? And how should you approach that?
So I think the future is bright, and I am extremely excited and energized about it. Fundamentally, a few macro things are going to change. We are a country of 1.3 billion people. We're the 6th largest economy in the world today at $2.6 trillion. And we are growing in the next few years to become the 3rd largest economy in the world after the US and China, right? At the same time, GDP per capita, which is currently around $1,800 in India, is going to tip over the $5,000 to $6,000 mark in that period of time. And so when you think about the macro forces, India is going to go from being a country that is coming out of poverty to a country that's going to drive local consumption. What's changing it is the mobile phone, because there are more mobiles in India than toothbrushes. There are more mobile phones in India than toilets. When you think about that mobile explosion, we're going to go from 1.3 billion people with 850 million mobile phones today to virtually every human being in the country having a mobile phone in the next 3 to 4 years, right? Which is exciting. In fact, I tend to think of it as, the basic necessities of life, which is food, clothing, and shelter, is being redefined as food, clothing, shelter, and mobile in this country. That's how enormous this changes, because we're a country with only 180 million television sets, right? Wow. And so the mobile is becoming the device for consumption, for entertainment, for education, for everything. And the beauty in this is the smartphone penetration, which is about 400 million phones in the user base of 500 million, is going to explode and get to about 900 million phones which are connected on the internet. So the internet is mobile and mobile is the internet. Now the beauty of this is the local language consumer base is going to explode again. From the current base of 330 million to nearly 700 million people, right? And most importantly, the digital advertising ecosystem, which today is just 15% of the overall AdX, is going to grow to become the largest dominant medium because people are spending the most amount of time. And within that, vernacular or local Indian language advertising is going to become dominant. It's really going to replicate traditional media today, because on television, given that 90% of the audience is consuming TV in local languages, that's how ad revenues are flowing, right? In local languages. And today, if we are establishing our moat as the largest platform, our goal in the next few years is very simple. It's really exploding that user base to go from the 216 million MAUs to, by the end of this year, over 300 million monthly active users. By 2025, over 500 million people, right? So 550 to 600 million people on the internet who are hopefully consuming close to 40 to 50 to 60 minutes of our content that really helps us unleash a multi-billion-dollar revenue stream of business. And so I think for us, I see the future as really, really bright. And I think along this journey, we're going to use the goodness around local languages because, I tend to think of India as Europe. It's really the United States of Europe. Every time you change a state or a country, the language changes, the religion changes, the culture changes, the food changes, right? And if you think about the world as a microcosm, while you and I may have been educated in English and maybe native English speakers, but most of the world isn't. In fact, you can make out when I speak to my regional friends in India or my European friends in Europe, they are thinking in their local language, translating it on the fly, and delivering that experience to you and me because we understand only English, right? And I think the opportunity is now take this goodness and apply it to different markets in the world that show these similar characteristics. And my initial belief was, hey, this is only an emerging market syndrome. But it's applicable to every developed country in Europe, every developed country in South America, every developed country in Asia Pacific and Japan. And, I think the world is just going to explode if we can get this goodness out there. And our goal would be to geographically expand as well and serve these local markets, or rather global markets, with the secret sauce that we hopefully have hit internally here. I think that's the goal, that's the ambition, that's where we see ourselves in the future.
Umang, thank you so much. It's been a fascinating discussion. Learned so much, and I want to thank you for sharing with all of us.
I really appreciate the time, Kevin. Have a good evening. Thank you so much for doing this so late at night. Wonderful talking to you.
Thank you.